What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:13 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Eastern Europe. So we have some reports coming in that apparently a drone, probably a Russian drone, was shot down in Estonia by NATO. The incident is said to have occurred on October 17th, so 10 days ago. Two drones of unknown origin flew over a military base in the southern part of Estonia. One of the two drones was shot down by quote-unquote allied forces, according to Estonian sources, okay? So this is very, very concerning, guys, okay? NATO has now shot down a drone that flew over a NATO base in Estonia. You see how things are escalating? Now, there is a major NATO base in Estonia, and so my guess is it was probably Russian recon drones that were flying over that base either as a provocation or to see what kind of NATO forces are in that base, because Russia is planning to invade Estonia, so they want to know what kind of troops are there, how many troops are there, okay? But NATO did shoot down one of these drones. And we also have major breaking news coming in from Lithuania. Lithuania has now closed their border with Belarus indefinitely, so permanently, due to the constant hybrid attacks. This will have a huge negative effect on Russia's Kaliningrad region, as Russian freight will no longer be able to reach Kaliningrad by land. Okay, so as of a couple of days ago until yesterday, which is when Lithuania closed their border with Belarus, the Russians were able to send semi-trucks across Lithuania from Belarus into Kaliningrad and back and forth to move freight, move goods between Kaliningrad and Belarus, okay? Now, because they shut the border with Belarus, the only way for Russian goods to get in and out of Kaliningrad is through the Baltic Sea, which is a lot longer, and it takes a lot longer and a lot more expensive. So this could potentially motivate Putin to invade Lithuania and create a land connection between Kaliningrad and Belarus, okay? And I wanted to just update you guys on the situation with the Russian nuclear-powered cruise missile that was just tested recently. Putin announced the successful test of the Burevestnik. Apparently, it basically has unlimited range. It can fly indefinitely for the most part, and it can outmaneuver air defenses and come in from any angle, okay? So this is extremely concerning. It uses a nuclear-powered turbo jet or ramjet, okay? So here's a picture of this thing when it was initially tested back in 2018. So it is quite large, but it is a cruise missile. It appears to be about the size of a Tomahawk missile, maybe larger. You can see these shipping containers on the ground, so noticeably larger than these shipping containers, but I do believe that they launched this one from one of these shipping containers, actually. So that's one of the ways that they can launch this thing, is put it in a shipping container, and they could have these shipping containers anywhere, okay? So that is very, very concerning. Want to play for you this clip of Putin and Gerasimov talking about the Burevestnik. You can see Putin here dressed in full military attire, BDUs, with some insignia there on his shoulder. Okay, but I'll let you listen to what they had to say.
It was something that was not feasible in the foreseeable future. That was something that very knowledgeable people told me. And now the decisive test has been completed. There's still a lot of work to be done in order to deploy this weapon and make it operational. There are many regulations to be observed and stages to go through, and yet all the key tasks have been solved. Now, as far as I understand, so I'd like to hear from you. Comrade Commander-in-Chief, yes, on the 21st of October, that test was carried out. The difference between that launch and the previous launches is that there was a multi-hour flight of that missile.
Okay, so Gerasimov here says that the difference between the test that they just did a couple days ago and prior tests is that it was a multi-hour flight, okay?
That traveled 14,000 kilometers, and that's not its limit.
Traveled 10,000 kilometers, and that's not its limit.
Right, it was powered by a nuclear propulsion engine, and the technical characteristics of the Burevestnik missile allow it to be used against protected sites anywhere. During the test flight of the missile, all the vertical and horizontal maneuvers were done that had been planned.
Okay, so he says that all horizontal and vertical maneuvers were conducted that had been planned, so meaning they can evade air defenses by maneuvering in different ways, okay? And also all protected structures can be hit, okay? So that is extremely concerning.
To demonstrate that this missile can overcome any defenses. 14,000 kilometers, right? Yes. And how long was it?
Sorry, 14,000 kilometers, okay? And overcome any air defenses.
In flight, about 15 hours.
Okay, 15 hours, according to Putin. 14,000 kilometers and 15 hours, okay?
And that's not the limit. No, that's not the limit. We will need to find a way to classify this weapon in the future, what kind of a weapon it is.
So if you do some simple math, if it was traveling for 15 hours and it went 14,000 miles, that's roughly 1,000 kilometers per hour. Okay, so that's like roughly 600 miles an hour. So that's about the speed of a Tomahawk cruise missile, or really any long-range cruise missile. So interestingly, even though it's using a nuclear-powered engine, it's not flying much faster than like a typical cruise missile or a large jet or a standard plane. It's not going supersonic, you know, it's not crossing the sound barrier, which is important for maintaining the stealthy characteristics of a cruise missile. You don't want to have this massive signature when it breaks the sound barrier, okay? Plus going a little bit slower allows it to maneuver, okay? Much like a plane can maneuver, planes can do turns, they can do banking turns, they can do loops, they can increase or decrease their altitude. This cruise missile can basically do the same thing that your typical passenger jet can do, okay? So think about how advantageous that is when it comes to evading air defenses and striking protected targets. So I want to just play a clip of what Trump had to say on Air Force One yesterday when he was flying to Japan, okay? He basically shrugged it off and said that we have nuclear-powered subs that are more dangerous, but take a listen to that. He said that we have nuclear-armed subs that are right off the coast of Russia, but listen to what he had to say.
So Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber-rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean...
They know we have a nuclear-armed submarine right off their shores. That's what he said.
Doesn't have to go 8,000 miles.
Doesn't have to go 8,000 miles.
They're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either.
He said they're not playing games with us and we're not playing games with them either.
We test missiles all the time, but, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles.
He said we don't need to go 8,000 miles and we test missiles all the time, basically shrugging it off. But I do think that he felt a little bit threatened based on the way he was responding here.
And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. You ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
All right, so then he took a jab at Putin, saying that he doesn't think it's appropriate for Putin to be testing missiles. He should be focusing on ending the war that was supposed to take a week and is now on its 4th year. I'll let you listen again. So Trump attacking Putin here.
Appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. You ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. You ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber-rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. You ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what you ought to do instead of testing missiles.
All right, so that's what Trump had to say about the Burevestnik. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP Shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP Shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video. And we have some major breaking news coming in that apparently the U.S. is demanding that Russia submit documentation about their Status 6 Poseidon underwater nuclear-armed torpedoes for international inspection to protect global stability. And apparently, if Russia refuses, then the U.S. will escalate in some unknown way. All right, so this is that famous, massive underwater nuclear-armed and nuclear-powered torpedo that carries like a 50 megaton warhead. All right, so the U.S. is demanding that Russia submit documents. Okay, so let me just read to you a little bit about this. Washington has sent an official request to Russia for the transfer of Poseidon nuclear underwater drones for international expertise. Washington has sent an official... It is reported that strict deadlines have been set for the fulfillment of this requirement until the end of 2025. The request, designed to protect global stability, hinted at a possible hidden escalation if refused. Russian presidential aide Nikolai Patrushev. Okay, Patrushev, if you don't know who he is, he was the head of the KGB. He's basically Putin's closest ally, okay, in Russia, aside from Medvedev. said that Russia does not intend to transfer its defense systems for outside inspections. He stressed that information about the number, routes, and modes of use of Poseidons is strategic and cannot be disclosed. Analysts see the U.S. demand as a recognition of the Pentagon's vulnerability. The Russian underwater drone Poseidon, also known as the Doomsday Weapon, is a qualitatively new system, the parameters and tactics of which remain classified. So guys, we are in the middle of a new arms race, okay? We're in the middle of Cold War 2.0, and I do believe that Trump is going to start rearming all of the U.S. nuclear triad that was stripped down during the Biden and Obama administration, because Obama entered into the START treaty with Putin, and Obama probably meant well, but obviously he didn't know who he was dealing with. He didn't know that Putin was a shyster, that Putin was a gangster, and obviously Russia was not abiding by the START treaty, okay, and we were spending billions and billions of dollars to disarm ourselves, because we literally had to remove over 1,000 warheads from our missiles, okay? You can't just remove warheads that easily. You have to pull the missiles out one at a time, take the warheads off, then securely ship them across the country to a storage facility. And when they ship them, they need armed escorts by U.S. military police, okay? And sometimes entire stretches of highway have to be shut down for each warhead, all right? And then you have to recalibrate the missile once you pull those warheads off. And then you have to retest those missiles, okay? And we were spending years and billions of dollars doing that during the Obama administration and Biden, okay, especially Obama mostly. All right, now the START treaty is gone, and so we can rearm our missiles, okay, but that's not going to happen overnight. It could take 1 to 2 years, all right. If we started immediately and put a lot of effort into it, it would still take 1 to 2 years at minimum to rearm everything, okay. And we have some concerning flights off the coast of New York City this afternoon. We have a U.S. sub hunter off the coast of New York City. It just completed a very, very intense patrol just south of Long Island. You can see it was doing lots of loops here, probably hundreds of loops south of Montauk. And it was flying really low, which means there must have been something over here. We also had a nuclear war command and control plane flying to its favorite spot off the East Coast near the Hudson Canyon area. And it was transmitting VLF messages, very low frequency messages, to our nuclear armed submarines. So U.S. nuclear forces are on very high alert. And of course, 2 days ago on Sunday afternoon, for the first time in maybe 10 years, we heard a Sky King message, which is about as rare as seeing Bigfoot. Okay, and I was lucky enough to actually hear it for myself. That's the first time I've ever heard a Sky King. All right, and I'm just thankful to God that I was able to hear it, because it was quite the experience. Okay, I almost didn't believe it. And here we have a U.S. nuke sniffer that was airborne over eastern Colorado just about an hour ago. And last night we had up to 4 nuclear war command and control planes airborne over the continental United States, which is just absolutely insane. And earlier this afternoon we had a nuclear war radar that was audible globally on shortwave frequencies. It was actually on the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency, so potentially it was either the Russians trying to jam our primary nuclear war frequency by blasting one of their powerful container radars, or it was the U.S. actually turning on some kind of nuclear war radar. But take a listen. This is in Europe, and it was also audible here in the United States, very clear. All right. And the Russian oil companies Rosneft and Lukoil are plunging on the Russian stock market. Over the last couple of days, Rosneft has dropped over 13% since the sanctions were announced, and Lukoil has dropped over 20% since the sanctions were announced. Okay, so these companies are the backbone of the Russian war machine, and they're now facing some serious issues due to the U.S. sanctions. Okay. And Venezuela claims they foiled a U.S. false flag operation. They said they captured a CIA-backed mercenary group planning a false flag operation in waters near Trinidad and Tobago. And Maduro said that he has canceled gas contracts with Trinidad and Tobago because of their cooperation with the U.S. military. And Venezuela's foreign minister warned Trinidad and Tobago to not open their territory to the United States to launch strikes from on Venezuela. Also, Russia ratified their strategic partnership agreement with Venezuela yesterday, and over the weekend there were a large number of Russian cargo planes that flew from Morocco to Venezuela, so potentially the Russians are shipping emergency supplies to the Venezuelan regime, sending them air defense missiles or different types of missiles, all right before the U.S. attacks. We do know that the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and associated strike group, which includes up to, I think, 4 guided missile destroyers, which can launch Tomahawk missiles and also intercept ballistic missiles with their Aegis system, their SM-3 ballistic missile interceptors. They're on their way to Venezuela now. Okay, so we have an entire aircraft carrier strike group going to the southern Caribbean, guys. And then yesterday we had 2 B-1 bombers fly from Grand Forks, North Dakota, all the way down to Venezuela and hug the coast. They flew along the entire coast of Venezuela, okay? So I think once Trump gets back from Asia, I think that's when it's on. I think he's obviously going to want to rest a couple of days, and then I think he's going to turn his attention to Venezuela. He's going to probably need to get a war powers extension because his war powers expire this Saturday. So he's going to need to get an extension from Congress potentially. But we did hear that he was willing to just strike Venezuela without congressional approval. So we'll have to wait and see. And the president of Turkey, Erdogan, signed a deal with the British Prime Minister to buy 20 British Eurofighter Typhoon fighter jets. And heavy Hezbollah movements were reported on the border with Israel yesterday. And we're hearing that Iran delivered 2,000 short-range missiles with a range of up to 500 kilometers to Hezbollah through underground tunnels in the past few days. Wow, 2,000 short-range missiles. That's insane. And Israel has now notified the U.S. that it plans to escalate strikes in Lebanon in response to Hezbollah's growing military presence. There were also reports yesterday of heavy military equipment being moved towards the Israeli border by Hezbollah. And I wanted to update you guys on Hurricane Melissa. So here we have a clip of Hurricane Melissa making landfall on western Jamaica. So the forecast was a little bit off. They said it was going to make landfall over Kingston, Jamaica, which is the capital of Jamaica. But it actually went to the western side of Jamaica, and it made landfall with 185 mile per hour sustained winds, guys. That is absolutely insane. All right. And it had a minimum pressure of 892 millibars, but it actually did make landfall on western Jamaica with sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. Okay, that's sustained. Now, the gusts could have been well over 250 miles an hour. So this is absolutely insane. We have to keep the people of Jamaica in our prayers, okay? But I know that the Jamaican people are going to survive because they are very tough. And here we have a video coming from Flatbridge, Jamaica. This is a historic bridge that was completely overtaken by rising waters. So this bridge is the oldest bridge in Jamaica, built in the 1700s, and it's over the Rio Cabre River, and you can see the river has completely swollen the bridge. This isn't the first time this has happened to this bridge. It happened before several times, so hopefully no major damage will be done to the bridge once the waters recede. We'll see that hopefully there's no major damage to it, but you can see the bridge just completely being swallowed by the floodwaters, which is just totally insane. And here's the latest forecast track of Melissa. You can see that it's going to go right over the eastern side of Cuba, right where Guantanamo Bay is located, and right over the Bahamas, and then go out towards Bermuda and into the North Atlantic. So by the next couple of days, this storm is going to be well clear of the Caribbean, and that will allow the U.S. to conduct more operations against Venezuela and the so-called cartels, okay? And this afternoon, we also have this U.S. Navy sub-hunter off the coast of Russia's Kaliningrad region flying really low near the port of Klaipėda in Lithuania, which is a major port for NATO. If the Baltics were to get invaded, this is how NATO would get military equipment into the Baltics. They would go into Klaipėda and Riga, okay? So this is very concerning. And the Pakistanis conducted a missile test along the border with Iran. Here we have a picture from this missile test. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with a live update and live monitoring. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from NYPrepper Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video.